3:59 a.m. Tucson, Arizona. August 4th, 2026. 3 deputy U.S. Marshals moved down the exterior corridor of the Cactus Rose Motel in single file. No flashlights. The corridor fixtures on the east wing had been reported as malfunctioning 3 days earlier by a maintenance call that had been logged but not executed. The Marshals had not repaired them. Room 115. 12 yards ahead. The door looked like every other door on that strip, sun-faded beige, a number screwed on in brushed chrome, the deadbolt housing slightly misaligned from years of heat expansion. The deputy at the front of the line tested the handle. Locked. He raised the ram. 2 rooms. An interior connecting door secured from the corridor side with a heavy-duty chain lock. 14 adult women who had been reported missing from 5 different cities across the American Southwest. The youngest was 22. The oldest was 41. In 42 seconds, the door would come down. 20 wanted men. 4 motels. 8 blocks of a Tucson strip that truckers and swap meet vendors slept on between weekend loads. 11 weeks of surveillance. 33 hours of active operation that had begun with a phone call at 2:14 in the morning from a woman working her 3rd shift, holding a laminated Polaroid she had almost put back on the clipboard without dialing the number on the back. That call closed the last open confirmation. It authorized the go. It is the reason the medical team was staged 2 blocks away, rather than arriving 90 minutes later, in response to a discovery nobody had planned for. 1 phone call. From a woman who had absolutely no obligation to make it. Her name was Sandra Roca, 41 years old. 3rd shift at the Cactus Rose, which sat near the eastern end of the stretch of South Freeway that the neighborhood called Miracle Mile, a name that had outlasted whatever optimism originally produced it by several decades. The strip ran 8 blocks, 3 payday lenders, 2 tire shops, a shuttered laundromat with its windows soaped white from inside, and 7 motels, arranged one after another, along the southbound service road, like the remaining teeth in a jaw. Sandra had worked the Cactus Rose for 4 years. She knew which rooms had soft spots under the bathroom tile near the radiator housing. She knew which truckers tipped and which ones left the key on the nightstand and were gone before 6 a.m. without a word. She knew that the ice machine alcove between the east wing and the vending corridor cycled loudly at approximately 2 and 2:45 and again at 3:30. And that if she did her restocking run between cycles, she could get back to the desk without the ambient hum following her down the hall. What she did not know at the beginning of her shift on the night of August 3rd was that the laminated Polaroid clipped to her clipboard was going to matter before the sun came up. The photo and the note had been left by the daytime clerk, Maria, who worked the desk from 7 a.m. to 3 p.m. The note was written on a strip of yellow paper stapled to the upper right corner of the Polaroid. It read, "This guest asked which rooms had no window facing the back of the building. Do not assign him a ground floor room. Call the number on the back of this flyer if you see him." Sandra had read the note at the start of her shift. She had looked at the photograph for 3 or 4 seconds. A man in his middle 30s, dark hair, a jaw that was slightly asymmetric, the kind of face that would not stand out in a motel lobby or a gas station or anywhere else that people moved through without lingering. She had thought about it for another few seconds. Then a guest in room 109 had appeared at the front desk asking for a nearby diner recommendation and an early checkout, and the clipboard had gone back on its hook, and the Polaroid had gone back to being part of the background. At 2:11 a.m., she walked the exterior corridor to restock the ice supply tray in the alcove. The vending lights were on. The corridor lights on the east wing were not. A man was standing at the ice machine with his back to her, holding a plastic bucket, his weight shifted to one leg, the way people stand when they think they're alone. He turned when he heard her footsteps. She recognized the face in the time it took her to cross the last 3 feet of corridor. She said nothing. She refilled the ice tray. She nodded in the direction of the vending machine with the practiced blankness of a night shift worker who has seen everything and chosen to register none of it. She walked back to the front desk at her standard pace. She stood behind the counter for 40 seconds. Then she flipped the Polaroid over and dialed the number. The Pima County Fugitive Task Force had opened the investigation in the 3rd week of May 2026. Not because anyone had filed a tip. Not because a confidential informant had come forward. Because of a discrepancy in a routine registry audit that looked, at first, like administrative backlog. The Pima County Sheriff's Office requires all registered sex offenders to verify their current address on a rolling 90-day cycle. Of 412 active registrants in the county, 22 had fallen out of compliance between February and April of 2026. The standard procedure: open individual trace files, work them through the system, resolve the majority within 30 to 60 days. Detective Ray Ortega of Tucson PD's Crimes Against Persons Unit had managed these trace files before. 11 years of fugitive work. He described them later as the administrative foundation of the job, unglamorous, procedural, essential, and mostly unremarkable. These were not unremarkable. 6 weeks into the trace process, with 11 of the 22 files still unresolved, a cross-referencing run against regional commercial databases produced a result that did not belong in a standard fugitive trace picture. 11 of the missing registrants had generated at least one identifiable data point: a credit card transaction, a cell tower registration, an ATM withdrawal, within a 4-block radius of a section of South Freeway in west-central Tucson. 4 of the 11 had a motel sign-in record on that strip within 30 days of dropping off the registry. All 4 had checked in under the same name: Michael Reyes. There is no Michael Reyes in the Pima County sex offender database whose physical description matches any of the 4 check-in signature cards. There is no Michael Reyes in regional law enforcement databases matching the composite profile of the 4 signatories. Ortega requested the full motel records from the Cactus Rose on June 3rd. He had the subpoenaed ledger in hand by June 9th. The ledger ran to 67 pages. Rooms 112, 114, and 116 appeared on 104 separate entries between November 3rd, 2025 and May 20th, 2026. 104 check-ins. Every entry, cash payment. Every turnover, within 96 hours of the previous checkout. Not once, in 9 months and 104 cycles, had the rhythm broken. The industry average for a motel in this price tier, on this strip, room turnover, every 2.4 days. 71% card payment. 12% repeat guest cash. Standard transient occupancy variance of plus or minus 30% across the year. These 3 rooms, 100% cash. 100% sub-96-hour cycle. For 9 consecutive months without a single deviation. That number does not exist in a legitimate motel operation. Not by accident. Not by coincidence. Not across 3 adjacent rooms for 9 months without someone having designed it precisely. Ortega spent 3 days with the ledger before he noticed the handwriting. The 41 Michael Reyes entries and the 63 entries under other names were not the work of 41 different people. They were the work of four distinct handwriting profiles, rotating through a bank of assumed names, producing the collective appearance of constant guest turnover, while actually cycling the same core group of men through the same 3 rooms, on a schedule calibrated to one specific threshold. The Cactus Rose had a standard welfare check protocol. Any room that appeared occupied without a face-to-face staff contact in more than 72 hours received an automatic knock from housekeeping. Standard industry practice. Required by county regulation. The 96-hour rotation kept each room continuously occupied, technically, in a transient guest sense, while preventing any single guest from accumulating enough consecutive days to trigger the check. The men were always gone before the 72-hour clock could start. Always replaced before the room appeared vacant. Someone had known about the 72-hour threshold. Someone had designed the system around it. That question, who, was the one that would take 3 more weeks to answer. And the answer, when it came, would not merely identify a person. It would reveal a second layer of the case that the task force had not known existed. The task force brought the ledger findings to the United States Marshals Service, Pima County District Office on June 3rd. Deputy Marshal James Callahan reviewed the summary and the cross-referenced warrant files that afternoon. He authorized a joint operation by June 10th. By June 17th, active surveillance was running at the Cactus Rose and at 2 adjacent properties identified through warrant file linkage. By July 1st, the task force was monitoring 4 motels simultaneously. The surveillance van established its position in the parking lot of a boarded-up Denny's on South Freeway on June 21st, 40 yards from the Cactus Rose front entrance. Clear lines to the lobby door, the south exterior stairwell, and the primary parking lot. A fixed utility pole camera, mounted under a city maintenance permit covering a genuine but deferred electrical inspection on the overhead line, covered the rear fence line and the alley running behind the building. The van stayed for 6 weeks. Over those 6 weeks, the surveillance team confirmed 11 of the 20 individuals on the task force's expanded warrant list at the Cactus Rose, or within 2 blocks of it. 3 others surfaced at the Desert Inn Motor Lodge, 4 blocks north. 2 at the Route 66 extended stay, 6 blocks west. 1 at the Freeway View, directly across the strip. 20 wanted men. 4 motels. 8 blocks of a strip most of Tucson drove past without slowing down. The surveillance also built a picture of the network's operational infrastructure. A rotating set of drivers, none of them on the warrant list, none individually charged, shuttled the men between properties when activity at any one location seemed to grow. Cash was the currency throughout. Burner phones were cycled every 10 to 14 days. Direct communication between the wanted men was not detectable by any intercept the task force was running. Messages moved through a single person. The task force designated him the coordinator. For the first 4 weeks of surveillance, his identity was a gap, a function the team could trace toward but never through. He did not appear on the warrant list. He did not appear on the fixed surveillance feeds entering or exiting any of the 4 properties directly. He existed in the picture as an absence. The break came from a vehicle. A property management company contracted to handle maintenance and minor facility operations for 2 of the 4 motel properties, including the Cactus Rose, had an employee whose personal vehicle appeared on the rear alley camera 3 times in late June and early July. Each appearance was late at night. None of the visits corresponded to any scheduled maintenance call in the company's work order log. The task force ran the plate. The registration matched an employee name. The background check that followed produced a detail that reframed everything the team had been looking at. The employee had worked from 2019 to 2022 as a compliance coordinator for a county-level social services office. During that tenure, he had managed, among other administrative functions, the welfare check scheduling protocol for residential facilities in the Western County District. He had known about the 72-hour check protocol for 4 years. He had access to the check-in ledger and the housekeeping rotation for both motel properties his company managed. He had the administrative credentials to enter maintenance authorizations into the property management system without the owner's direct approval on orders under a certain dollar threshold. He had designed the 96-hour rotation. He had built it into the system and maintained it for 9 months. His arrest on July 28, 2026, was quiet. A traffic stop at 11 a.m. on a Tuesday, no press, no announcement. He was transported to the Pima County Sheriff's secured interview facility and spent 6 hours with federal investigators. His cooperation was partial and strategically calibrated. He confirmed the locations of the remaining unconfirmed warrant subjects. He identified the freeway view as a 4th active property. And he disclosed, in a statement that required 4 hours, 2 recesses, and an immunity-adjacent conversation with his attorney, before it was fully committed to the record, that there were 14 adult women in 2 connecting rooms on the ground floor of the Cactus Rose Motel, rooms 115 and 117. Not the 3 rotation rooms. 2 additional ground floor rooms, adjacent to the corridor where the warrant suspects had been cycling, with an interior connecting door that had been installed, authorized through a maintenance order in December of 2025, logged as a standard unit modification, and a long-term booking under the Michael Reyes alias, running continuously since October 19, 2025. 9.5 months. The interior connecting door was secured with a heavy-duty chain lock. The lock was mounted on the corridor side of the door frame. From inside the rooms, it could not be opened. The windows in both rooms had been painted over on the interior with black latex paint. The paint modification appeared in the coordinator's maintenance log as a guest light blocking request, authorized at the tenant's expense. Flagged for nothing. The coordinator's statement contained one line that one of the task force investigators described in a later briefing summary as reading almost like a legal document translated from a different language. Subject states he was aware of the presence of individuals in rooms 115 and 117 and took no action to report this awareness to law enforcement or property management. 7 months. From January to July. He had known. He had said nothing. What is also in the record, the coordinator did not create the situation in those 2 rooms. But he maintained the administrative infrastructure that made the entire arrangement functionally invisible. The check-in rotation, the maintenance layer booking, the authorized window modification. He did not do those things in ignorance of what the rooms contained. The timeline establishes that clearly, and the document record establishes it twice. The position is simple enough to state, whatever cooperation the coordinator provided in July, the 6 months that preceded it represent a documented failure of intervention that the case record does not soften. His statement was the reason the task force knew about 115 and 117 before the sweep. That knowledge allowed Callahan to pre-position a medical team 2 blocks away before the entry teams moved in. That is not a small thing. It is, in the narrow arithmetic of that night, the most consequential thing. And it came 7 months too late. The 48 hours between the coordinator's statement and the sweep were, in Callahan's later account, the most operationally constrained planning sequence he had worked in more than a decade of fugitive operations. The task force now had 2 simultaneous objectives inside one operation. The fugitive sweep across 4 properties, 11 weeks in planning, had to function as a wrapper around a second, more urgent objective, reaching rooms 115 and 117 at the Cactus Rose before anything on the 4-property perimeter shifted. The problem was geometry. Rooms 115 and 117 sat at the geographic midpoint of the East Wing exterior corridor, between the rotation rooms and the stairwell exit. The planned K9 sweep path for the warrant fugitive sequence at the Cactus Rose ran directly past them. If anyone inside those rooms reacted, made a sound audible through the exterior door, applied pressure to the chain-locked connecting door in a way that carried to the parking lot where 2 of the warrant subjects had vehicles staged, the coordinated 4-property push could begin to fragment before the first room was cleared. There was also the lock to account for. The chain on the corridor side of the connecting door required a cutter. The cutter had to arrive at the right door in the right sequence, quietly, ahead of the K9 sweep, ahead of the rotation room entries, ahead of the 4 a.m. clock. Callahan restructured the entry sequence at 3:15 a.m. on August 4th, 45 minutes before the coordinated go. He moved the approach to rooms 115 and 117, 30 seconds ahead of the 4-property clock. A 3-deputy entry team and a tactical medic would breach the corridor door at 3:59 and 30 seconds. Ahead of the sweep. Ahead of everything. 2 ambulances and a mobile crisis response unit staged at a closed auto parts store 2 blocks east at 3:55 a.m. Put yourself in Callahan's position for a second. You have a 30-second window, a single tactical medic, a chain cutter, and 3 deputies. You have 20 wanted men across 4 properties who are always watching for movement. If those 30 seconds go audible before the 4 a.m. clock, the window closes on 4 motels simultaneously. You have 1 shot at this sequence. He authorized it at 3:59. Obstacle Lash 1. At 3:48 a.m., 17 minutes after the go authorization was transmitted, the rear alley camera at the freeway view registered a 3rd vehicle in the property's back lot. 2 had been confirmed during the 3:15 briefing. The 3rd's registration did not match any name in the task force database. A 2nd unconfirmed warrant subject may have arrived in the previous 90 minutes, or someone else entirely had entered the lot. The Freeway View team had been planned as a 2-agent surveillance hold, with a patrol unit staged 1 block away. The task force had 14 minutes, from 3:48 to 4 a.m., to restructure that approach to a full tactical entry, brief the restructured team, and get them in position without triggering movement at any of the 3 primary properties. They restructured. They confirmed positions at 3:59. 3:59 and 30 seconds. 3 deputies and a tactical medic moved down the East Wing corridor of the Cactus Rose from the north end. The corridor was dark. The Tucson night air at this hour in early August sits at 81 degrees and still. No wind on this section of the strip. No traffic on South Freeway at this hour. The silence of a city that does not stop, but does pause. 1 deputy tested the exterior handle on room 115. Locked. He raised the ram at 3:59 and 41 seconds. Made contact at 3:59 and 42. They were inside before the 4 a.m. clock started. The tactical medic went through the connecting room door as soon as the chain was cut. Two of the deputies held the corridor. One moved through the room, calling out in a low, even voice. Standard contact protocol for a confined space, where the occupants may be disoriented, may not speak English, may respond to a sudden breach with any number of unpredictable reactions. What the team found in those two rooms took 40 minutes to fully document and required 3 additional medical personnel beyond the originally staged team to properly assess. 14 adult women. The youngest was 22 years old. She had been reported missing from Albuquerque, New Mexico, in late November of 2025. Her family had filed the original missing persons report with Albuquerque PD and had subsequently contacted Tucson PD directly in January of 2026, following a possible sighting report on the south side of the city. The Tucson PD Missing Persons Unit had no active file connecting that sighting to anything on the Miracle Mile Strip. The oldest was 41, from El Paso, Texas. Missing since the last week of October of 2025. Her sister had filed the report and had called the sheriff's tip line 6 times between November and March. All 14 had been reported missing. The shortest absence on record was approximately 3 months. The longest was just over 8. All received immediate medical assessment on scene. All were transported within the hour. Ortega later said, in a briefing summary that was not included in the public document release, that the decision not to conduct any investigative interviews with the 14 women on the day of the rescue was the only operational choice in the entire 11-week case he had been completely certain of from the first moment it arose. The medical team did not clear the scene until 5:47 a.m. At 4 a.m. exactly, connecting rooms secure, medical team moving in, corridor held, Callahan transmitted the coordinated go. 4 properties, 8 blocks, 20 wanted men. The clock started on all 4 simultaneously. At the Cactus Rose, 6 deputies and the K-9 unit hit rooms 112, 114, and 116 in a simultaneous 3-door entry at the 4 a.m. mark. Room 112, 1 subject, in bed, no physical resistance, in custody, at 4 minutes and 11 seconds elapsed. Room 114, 1 subject at the window with the sill open and 1 leg outside the frame. The K-9 unit secured him before the second leg cleared. Room 116, 1 subject in the bathroom with a chair braced against the door from the inside. The second ram contact separated the chair from the door. 3 subjects. 3 rooms. Elapsed time, 2 minutes and 51 seconds. At the Desert Inn Motor Lodge, 4 blocks north, 3 deputy U.S. Marshals and a Tucson PD tactical unit entered simultaneously through the lobby and the rear service door. The lobby approach was a deliberate misdirection. 2 plainclothes officers presenting at the front desk as arriving guests, occupying the desk clerk's attention, while the rear team moved to the second-floor corridor without alerting the corridor. 7 subjects across 6 rooms. 4 surrendered without physical resistance. 2 moved toward the stairwell. 1 cleared the stairwell and reached the parking lot exit, where a staged patrol unit had been in position since 3:58. He was apprehended 31 seconds after he cleared the fire door. 7 subjects. Elapsed time from first entry to final apprehension at this property, 4 minutes and 8 seconds. At the Route 66 extended stay, 6 blocks west, the layout simplified the approach. Single story, exterior corridor, 2 vehicle exit points sealed by staged units at 3:59. 4 subjects in 4 rooms, all in custody within 90 seconds of first entry. No resistance. Obstacle #2. At the freeway view, the third vehicle in the rear lot, the one that had forced the 14-minute tactical restructure, remained unaccounted for when the freeway view team made entry at 4:11 a.m., 11 minutes behind the coordinated clock. The team cleared 6 rooms. 5 subjects in custody within 4 minutes of entry. The 6th, the one whose presence the coordinator had flagged but not fully confirmed, was not in his registered room. The task force held the property perimeter. A room-by-room walk began at 4:19 a.m. At 4:37, a deputy opened the door to the pool equipment storage room at the eastern end of the freeway view property. The room smelled of pool chemicals and motor oil. The 6th subject was sitting on the concrete floor with his back against the filter housing, a duffel bag across his knees. The bag contained approximately $3,000 in cash. A prepaid cell phone showing no recent activity, and a printed schedule for a westbound bus service departing Tucson Central Terminal at 5:15 a.m., 38 minutes from that moment. He had been in that room, by the physical evidence, since before midnight. He had had hours to move. He had not moved. The question of why, whether he was waiting for a signal from the coordinator that never came after the July 28th arrest, whether something else had shifted his calculation, remains unresolved in the investigative record. 20 subjects in custody. Elapsed time from the first door contact at 3:59 and 42 seconds to the final apprehension at 4:37 a.m., 37 minutes and 18 seconds. The 33-hour operation that had begun with Sandra Rocha's phone call at 2:14 a.m. ended before the sun cleared the Rincon Mountains east of the city. Callahan stood in the Cactus Rose parking lot at 5:36 a.m., watching the last set of ambulance taillights turn east on South Freeway. 20 men in custody. 14 women en route to medical care. The sweep was done. The coordinator's statement, sealed in a federal evidence folder, contained one sentence that had not yet been acted on, a reference to receiving the operational methodology, the rotation system, the alias bank, the maintenance layer booking, from a source he had declined to identify. Someone had designed this. Someone had taught it. The answer to who remained open. All 20 subjects were processed through the Pima County Sheriff's booking facility between 6 a.m. and 10:45 a.m. on August 4th, 2026. All 20 faced outstanding warrants for failure to register. 17 faced additional federal charges connected to the sweep. The coordinator, arrested on July 28th, faced a separate federal information that had been sealed pending the operation and was unsealed on August 5th, the following day. 2 of the 20 men arrested at the 4 motels had prior arrests in other jurisdictions on failure to register charges. Both had been released on their own recognizance pending hearings in those jurisdictions. Both had subsequently stopped reporting to their registries. Both had been on the Pima County Task Force's expanded warrant list for an average of 14 months before the Miracle Mile surveillance placed them. 14 months on a warrant list before the sweep located them on an 8-block strip in a city where the task force had been operating. The housekeeping ledger, all 67 pages, was entered into federal evidence on August 4th. The motel's owner, who was not a suspect and who cooperated fully and immediately with the investigation, provided a written statement that day confirming he had been unaware of the long-term booking in rooms 115 and 117. His statement is consistent with the evidence. The coordinator's company had processed the booking through a maintenance tier administrative account, a layer of the property management system that the owner accessed only for quarterly financial summaries. The booking was invisible in any routine operational sense. It did not appear on the standard occupancy report the owner reviewed. It appeared in 4 separate administrative documents that the task force subpoenaed in June: the check-in log, the maintenance work order schedule, the housekeeping rotation plan, and the utility sub-metering record for the East Wing. The sub-metering record showed a continuous and anomalous power draw originating from the 115 and 117 wing, beginning in the 3rd week of October 2025. The draw was consistent in its pattern and inconsistent with standard occupancy. What was drawing that current has not been specified in any public document released as of the date of the sweep. 4 documents. 9 months. Not one audited. Not one flagged. The infrastructure was not complicated. There was no technology involved beyond a property management software login and a maintenance work order form. There were no encrypted communications, no dark web logistics, no sophisticated financial structures. The mechanism that concealed 9 months of activity in 2 connected rooms on a motel strip in Tucson was a housekeeping ledger, a rotating alias used 41 times, and an administrative account that nobody thought to audit. The task force found it because 6 unrelated fugitive trace files happened to converge on the same 4-block radius. That convergence was not by design. It was administrative coincidence. Most of these ledgers are never cross-referenced. Most of these maintenance schedules are never subpoenaed. The Miracle Mile strip is not exceptional. It is ordinary. That is the detail that most people who review the case file come back to. Obstacle #3, documentation. The task force identified, in the post-sweep document review, a 5th motel property on the strip, 2 blocks east of the Cactus Rose, that had been linked to the alias bank in 2 of the ledger entries from January and February of 2026. The property had not been part of the sweep. No warrant subjects were confirmed there during the surveillance window. Its role in the network's 9-month operation has not been publicly characterized. The investigation was not complete on August 4th. The sweep was a single operational phase of a case whose full dimensions were still being mapped. The responsibility question remains open. Does it stop with the coordinator, or does it extend through the property management structure higher up? The evidence does not clarify this completely. One detail sits in the public record without explanation. The utility sub-metering record shows an anomalous power draw from the 115 and 117 wing across all 9 months. The task force documented it in June, but did not include it in the August 5th release. What drew that power was never stated publicly. 20 men are in federal custody as of August 5, 2026. 17 face additional federal charges beyond the original warrants. The coordinator faces a separate federal information, unsealed the day after the sweep. The 14 women recovered from rooms 115 and 117 of the Cactus Rose Motel are receiving ongoing medical care and support services at facilities that have not been publicly named, per standard protocol for cases involving prolonged confinement. The man found in the pool equipment room at 4:37 a.m., with $3,000 in cash, a prepaid phone, and a bus schedule for a route he never took, has not explained through legal counsel or in any public filing why he staged an exit he did not use. That remains open in the investigative record. The coordinator's statement references having received the operational design, the 96-hour rotation, the alias bank, the maintenance layer booking mechanism, from a source whose identity he declined to provide even when offered cooperation incentives. He received the system. He deployed it. He did not invent it. Someone with working knowledge of residential welfare check protocols and property management software built a system precise enough to sustain 9 months of operation undetected, and then transferred that system to the coordinator. That person has not been identified. The investigation of that source is active and ongoing. Rooms 115 and 117 of the Cactus Rose Motel are sealed under federal evidence tape this morning. The exterior corridor is quiet. The ice machine alcove where Sandra Roca stood at 2:11 a.m. on August 4th, 2026, looks exactly as it did before she dialed the number. The network that operated across 8 blocks of South Freeway for 9 months has been dismantled. The methodology that built it, the administrative logic, the rotation system, the maintenance layer concealment, is now documented in a 67-page housekeeping ledger sitting in a federal evidence vault in Tucson. The sweep is done. The blueprint still exists. Somewhere with someone who has not yet been named. That is the question. The case does not close on August 4th or August 5th or any date yet in the federal